Ngā mihi nui kia koutou, ko Cheryl Doig tōku ingoa, no o te tahi ahau. I'm one of the trustees of Ako Tahi, Learning City Christchurch, and it's my pleasure to host this really important and exciting conversation. I'm really looking forward to it. So just a little bit of background about Ako Tahi. We're a trust here in Christchurch that has a focus on growing the learning ecosystem of people really understanding and connecting from an equity, access and innovation point of view. So we're interested in amplifying the conversation so that schools, tertiary institutions, community groups, businesses are all on the same pathway and trying to reduce the equity gap. And that looks different for different groups of people, so that's not a one size fits all. And also this week is our Ako Tahi Learning Days, where we try and bring together some really interesting conversations and different ways of connecting learning, just sort of scratching the surface of what learning looks like across the city and building those connections, because for us, having those connections and helping people to work together is a critical part of a learning city. And that's why we're here today, because in the food sustainability and learning conversation, it's I guess a critical connection between those three things, because they're not actually separate. So it's a pleasure to welcome our panel today. Our conversation, food sustainability and learning. How can we create meaningful, community connected and intergenerational learning through food, sustainability and the natural environment? Just a pretty big question. This is a critical conversation for people, place and planet. During our Zoom, three amazing panelists will share some of their projects that they're involved with and explore how these create new opportunities for diverse learners in the sort of spaces that they inhabit. So it's my pleasure to introduce the panel in alphabetical order by surname. Hamish Duff. Hamish is a technologist, futurist and permaculturist. I knew I'd stumble over that, plus a whole lot of other things. He serves on the board of the Food Resilience Network Canterbury, focusing on creating a regenerative food future. Hamish is involved in the establishment of the Otakaro Orchard, a living learning environment where people can grow, cook and preserve their own fruit and veggies, and where community experts will share their skills, teaching the community where our food comes from and how to grow it themselves. And he's pretty good at doing that. So intergenerational knowledge sharing is pretty much key to his work. Kate Russell, our second panelist, has a 30-year history in the community sector with lots of governance and executive roles in a number of well-known Kiwi charities. She's the Programs and Partnerships Manager at Christchurch City Council, and her focuses are on the public experience of parks, education, and the training of our horticultural interns and community engagement and participation in our city's green space. So welcome, Kate. And our third panelist is Fiona Stewart, who's I've known for a long time too. She's a social entrepreneur with extensive experience in non-profit organisations, crisis intervention, young people, conflict resolution and facilitation. She's co-founder of Cultivate Christchurch, a social enterprise focused on youth development through urban farming. Cultivate Christchurch is on a mission to inspire and engage young people who are not currently in education, employment or training. They do it outdoors with their hands actually in the soil. So welcome to the three of you. The way we're setting up today is this session will be recorded, so you'll get a copy of it later, and I will take a screenshot of participants during the session. Each panelist is going to share with us some of their thoughts and their projects that they're involved with, but also then some initial thoughts on how that connects with opportunities for diverse learners. And after each has spoken, we'll have a lot of time for questions and wherever that might take us. So let's start. Our first panelist to speak today is going to be Kate. So Kate, over to you.
Kia ora koutou, everyone. Ko Kate Russell takuingoa. So as Cheryl said, I am the Programs and Partnerships Manager here at our council within the Parks unit, so very, very specific to parks. However, overarching a lot of what I do here at council, we have some strategic priorities that drive our work, and across council we have various lead people for those goals. My goal that I lead across council is active and engaged communities who own their own future. So that very much dovetails into what I'll talk to you about today. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Can everybody see that? Give me a wave. Jolly good. All right. So just going to talk to you about what council's doing in this space, particularly in our parks and our green spaces areas. So I've been at council for 3 years, and I've been leading a new program called the Community Partnerships Program within parks. We were lucky enough to have been given a parcel of money from the Earthquake Resilience Fund to help us get that established. And in essence, that allows me to have a couple of staff, a coordinator, and a dedicated community ranger who works specifically with schools, where we take inquiries from all of these groups and schools if they want to take part in planting programs or weeding programs, or actually better still through our nature nurture program, becoming genuine kaitiaki of their local spaces. A lot of schools, not surprisingly, want to do that in the park spaces that are close and within walking distance of their school, and many of them have taken an amazing role. I'll give you a great example of Paparoa Street School have taken on the Rutland Reserve and have done an enormous amount of work planting and keeping the space, and even putting up interpretation signs with council permission and help that talks about the school's journey. So we just have a huge myriad of projects going on at any given time. Obviously, a big development area for us at the moment is activity in and on the edges of the red zone. I think we can all acknowledge that the red zone is probably the biggest opportunity that this city has had since getting Hagley Park, really, with incredibly well invested communities and plenty of organisations and people who want to do some pretty amazing things in there. So we took over management of the red zone in terms of doing the maintenance in July of last year. We as yet do not have ownership of the red zone. That still sits with Land Information New Zealand, but the red zone's being passed over to council's ownership in parcels for over the next year to 18 months. So there's plenty of stuff going on in the red zone and on the edges. Great projects like the Richmond Community Garden, New Brighton Community Garden, and people such as Sean Carvel, who are working with schools along the edge of the red zone to create natural play spaces, and a myriad of other things, including work with food, but also ecological restoration and a lot of planting. In the red zone, we have an interim governance group called Te Tira Ka Hiku Hiku. That name refers to the end of the branch where the most possibility for growth happens. That's the name we were gifted for that group. And they look at, along with LINZ, at applications for community purposes of a temporary nature within the red zone that can go ahead in the interim period while that land's being passed over into council hands. And Chrissy Williams, who's probably quite well known to most people, heads up that committee, and they also have some money to give away to groups that want to do stuff in that red zone as well. We provide funding. Everybody knows that the council has various funding streams to provide to groups that are doing this sort of work, predominantly through our Strengthening Communities Fund. Our Sustainability Fund has really honed in its purpose of late into climate change activities. We've had a really decent amount of applications this year, and we're just about to start considering those. We're also doing quite a bit of work through our community Waterways partnership and the stormwater consent. We've recently launched a large partnership, and many organisations have signed up to a charter across business, local authorities and the community to improve the health and the Māori of our waterways, which is a really exciting initiative that's going on. Part of that is an initiative called Healthy River o Pauaho, which came under my management initially and was funded by DOC. And this, amongst other things, included us having a coordinator who was specifically working with schools along the Pauaho to take up projects to clean up the river, monitor the river, and increase the biodiversity along the river. I've talked about our Schools Ranger program. Tamara, our Schools Ranger, is incredibly busy with schools, and we actually have a waiting list now. So naturally, you all know it's LTP time. So my team and I are busy bidding and talking to the right people about continuing that fund as we go forward. Here's a few pictures for you. This is the type of activity we're talking about. It's everything from pulling things out to putting things in, large and small. And it's just, in the last year, we had 31,000 hours of community volunteering and more than 60,000 plants put in the ground. There are lots of opportunities across council in terms of learning activities, particularly in parks. We have obviously an apprenticeship program where we currently have 7 apprentices with us, and happily we're in that situation where the government's actually paying for apprenticeships at the moment and paying for the tuition, and that makes it a lot easier for us. We've recently picked up a contract with MSD where we bring cadets into parks for an 18-week period, and across those 18 weeks, those people get an experience of all the different aspects of parks and are paid minimum wage through MSD. This is for people who, for whatever reason, have found finding employment difficult. And very happy to say that we've had 2 tranches of 6 people go through that program, and we ended up with 3 of the people in the first program being given permanent jobs with council. And in the second tranche that's just going through, we've already got 3 who have been placed into full-time employment. So that's a really good outcome. We do take part in Children's University, both with activities in the red zone and through our learning through action program where we take kids into places like the Metro Refuse Station and our various parks and teach them about biodiversity and about taking part as active citizens in the city. So as I said, we've got a lot of partnerships. We've got this partnership with MSD. Recently, we've been doing a lot of work with getting cadetships for people with physical and intellectual disabilities. We've developed a relationship with Ferndale School and have their young people coming through parks and taking part both in volunteering programs, but also with our staff and learning key outdoors skills. And we are about to launch a program with Papanui High's Kamiora program along the same vein. So, and we're just starting to work on our relationship with Workbridge for the same thing. So we are wanting to diversify with who we're providing those opportunities to. And I'll just finish up with a couple more pictures. There's Chrissy Williams right in the middle there. And yeah, there you go. That's it from me.
Great, thanks, Kate. It's good to know that there's such a lot of work happening in the council, and yeah, quite exciting with the possibilities, and best of luck with the funding and the long-term plan. We're all rooting for more money in that sort of area.
Thank you. All prayers gratefully accepted.
Absolutely. And just now going to hand over to you, Hamish, to talk a little bit about your work.
Kia ora koutou, ko Hamish Duff tōku ingoa, no o tatahi aho. I am, as Cheryl mentioned, a technologist by day job, but also have a food forest out here in West Melton. So I've been involved in trying to grow our own food organically and using permaculture techniques for 8 years now. And it's been a bit of a learning journey, and I think that's the story I want to tell you about today. So we started with a bit of a blank canvas out here 8 years ago with a completely worn out piece of pasture, sandy, awful, rocky West Melton ground, dry and windy. We call it the windy desert out here. And we decided we were going to grow most of our own food. And that learning journey and where we've gone to there has turned into a bit of a philosophy for life, and hopefully is starting to show other people the way forward. They could be doing this themselves. We started out looking to grow healthy, fresh food, organic food being key there. Also, obviously, to save some money. But as I said, it's involved to be much more than that. I think the topic today of the food sustainability and learning is just about talking about my life, really. So it's great, Cheryl's using that topic. Thank you. I think that the doom and gloom that we hear about the climate in the media, we hear about the environment and hear about all the crises that are happening within humanity is overwhelming for most people, and therefore they stop taking action. I know people even in Christchurch with a great recycling program who don't recycle. I find that amazing. I know people who have got a lot of land who don't compost, who don't grow any food themselves. And I think that's something that really needs to change, because I think we all need to take personal responsibility for the climate, for our environment. Kaitiakitanga, looking after the land that we have stewardship of during our lives, and leaving it in a better condition when we finish. I think that's a huge challenge for most people, but actually it's a challenge about how to start. Because if you start taking action, if you start making changes to be more sustainable, to reduce your waste, to grow some food, to start making better choices about the products you buy and the food that you buy, then that action breeds more action, gives you more control, gives you more hope for the future, and gives you an outlet for actually doing something about these enormous challenges that are affecting all of us. I think that's really critical for all of us, personal control and responsibility. So that learning journey has been a very personal one for us, myself and my wife, and it's essentially been completely self-directed through curiosity. And I think that's the best opportunity for learning, is finding the things that you feel passionate about or think that are important, learning everything you can about them, taking action and doing something about them, and then sharing those experiences to help other people learn. As we've gone along, obviously, the amount of information that's available on the web through YouTube, through blogs, through different websites, there's a huge amount of information to help people start this process out there. That the problems that we've encountered, we've almost without exception found other people who have encountered the same problems and have suggested changes. And there are people everywhere all around the world who are sharing their experiences of doing exactly the same thing. There's a real movement towards growing your own food, becoming more sustainable, and contributing that back to help people. I think that's really important. if we look at our property now, after 8 years, we have this flourishing, diverse ecosystem. We have abundant food. Yes, that takes some work to do, but I think this is an opportunity that many people could be taking. We're capturing carbon into the soil. You can see the soil that we've built, you know, in some areas 10 or 15 centimeters of beautiful, fresh, dark earth sitting on top of the awful, dry, sandy stuff that was here beforehand. We share food with our family, our friends, our neighbours, our community. We're encouraging that approach in our community and getting other people to share as well. And I think there's this opportunity for people to actually take control and take some direction in the future is really critical. Therefore, I joined the board of the Food Resilience Network Canterbury. Now, the FRN, sorry, I'll use the short version. The FRN is a network of organisations. It's not one organisation. It's essentially to help, there are the three key prongs to it. There's a schools program, much as the councils are doing, facilitating schools into using, to creating gardens, creating education programs around learning and learning to grow your own food, learning to cook with it. There's some fabulous programs going on in all sorts of different organisations in Christchurch doing that. The second prong is again the red zone and facilitating the work that's going on to developing the community gardens along the red zone. The Community Gardens Association, sorry, Canterbury Community Gardens Association is leading a charge there to provide these resources, to provide a space that's safe for people to come and engage with food and engage with sustainability and learn about it. There are programs like, I think, Kate, you mentioned the Brighton Community Garden, where a whole lot of students, instead of going to sports on a Wednesday afternoon, come along and grow and learn how to cook and grow with that from the garden. I think that's really cool. And the third prong is Otakaro Orchard. Otakaro has had some troubles, but is moving forwards really nicely now. It's a facility that's going to be a shared facility amongst all the community groups that are working in this network, that is a space that we can teach out of, that we can have meetings and facilitate development. We can talk about funding, we can talk about how we get more people involved in this area. It's a really exciting place. Otakaro Orchard itself is a permaculture food forest, essentially a whole lot of fruit trees with underplantings and different layers of plantings that have different foods and different insect attracting plants and things like that. It's really thriving environment sitting on the side of the Avon River, just where the new footbridge is going across. So that's going to be a wonderful gateway to that facility. The building is still in construction there, but it's going to be a great community facility for these food-related groups. Now, my personal philosophy around the Food Resilience Network is there are lots of people doing great work all around the place, and the FRN is not trying to take over all of those activities, but to facilitate, to amplify the great stories of the work that's going on, to get more people involved and create connections between the different groups and get them working together, because together we can be so much stronger, and to facilitate and coordinate change. And I think this is a process that we're going through there that's helping organisations to learn better ways of working together, encouraging collaboration across the city, across the region. In fact, there's a national network of food resilience networks that's going as well. But it's also giving people that opportunity to learn how to start growing and building their own sustainable environment. And I think that's the really critical nug of the FRN. 2 or 3 generations ago, I bet most of our families grew their own food. Certainly my grandparents did. And it's something that in the last couple of generations, we've lost to the convenience of the supermarket. However, food that's grown industrially, traditional agriculture is sprayed, is fertilized, is is covered in pesticides and herbicides and fungicides and things. And for me, my background is science and plant biotechnology. I'm concerned about the health implications of that, the long-term health implications of that. That was the start of our journey. And I think that's the direction we all need to be going in, taking personal responsibility for the environment that we're stewarding, we have stewardship over, and working to try and improve that environment and leave it in a better state for those who come after us. Kia ora.
Thanks so much, Hamish. Lots to think about there. And I've been writing a few questions to ask later on to you as panelists. So I'm going to now hand over the reins to Fee from Cultivate Christchurch to talk us through some of the mahi that she's involved with. So over to you, Kate. Over to you, Fee.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Fiona toko ingoa. I'm the co-founder of Cultivate Christchurch, and my background's really in youth development, as Cheryl explained at the start, so well explained too, so thank you for that. And I guess sort of my motivation for creating a program like Cultivate was really coming from my own background, where I grew up on a farm in South Canterbury, and we were exposed to the wide outdoors and all the exciting things that you can do on a farm. And what I got from that was really quite a lot of personal development and confidence building and understanding about the land and what it does for us as people and how we can become stewards of that land too. But what I realize is that not many people have those opportunities, or the opportunities to have those sort of experiences to learn and develop these kind of really fundamental things to us as humans. So I decided that I wanted to create a farm school at quite a young age. And since then, my journey has been really about building what I needed in order to be able to do what I do now. In my previous roles, I was working with people in mental health sector and also young people in the youth justice sector. So a lot of those young people that I worked with actually said that they would stop committing crime if they had a job. And finding a place for a young person who was challenged behaviourally with learning difficulties was really, really, obviously really challenging. So we found that you might find a place that was willing to employ them, but they didn't have the support they needed to be able to overcome the barriers that are prevalent in young people's lives and consistently change as well. So that's really where Cultivate came from. So what is Cultivate? Cultivate's an urban farm. We have a network of urban farms located in the city. So one is on the corner of Peterborough Street and Manchester Street. And then we have another site that's in Horsville. And we have a new lease, which is very exciting, in the red zone. So that's in the Richmond area next to the Richmond Community Garden. And we're working on that land for the next couple of years to really build the soil in there, because at the moment it's had houses on it, so it doesn't have a lot of life in it. And to do our job, which is growing organic and beyond organic, so growing food using organic and beyond organic methods. So I'll talk about Richmond later, but the youth program essentially runs within the farms, and the exciting part that we're talking about today around food sustainability and learning is all integrated through and through the whole program. The food is the vehicle, if you like, where we do positive youth development, and the outcomes are around environmental sustainability, health and wellbeing, and then also education around urban farming and how to grow our food and how to take those skills home and teach our families and whānau about healthy growing practices and then eating healthy food as well. So on our farms, as I said, our practices are around really reflecting what Hamish was talking about and the importance of soil health. So our mantra comes from the Soil and Health Association, which is healthy soil equals healthy food and ultimately healthy people and communities. So when we first came to Peterborough Street, it was 20 centimetres of soil, which is not enough to build, to grow much food in, especially not carrots. And that was on top of hard-packed rubble. So we needed to build soil, and a lot, basically. So we started with one process, but the main thing that we really did to build soil was to bring in food waste that was at that time going to landfill. So from restaurants and cafes, we would go and pick them up on an electric bike with a trailer and have wheelie bins that we basically brought back to the Peterborough Street site. And over 5 years, we've built 900 tonnes of soil. So it's quite an epic amount of, well, it's a growing medium. And with that, each year we have on average, so the program really runs with obviously the youth being our central focus. So young people between 16 and 25 having employment. It's an employment training program. So we have a contract with the Ministry of Social Development where we employ young people for 30 hours a week for 20 weeks. They need to be at a certain level in order to get onto the program. And so if they can't quite get to the expectations that we need as a base, then they can be a volunteer intern until they can get to that point. Once they've done their 20 weeks, and during that process, we work on, during that process, we're working on their health and well-being, and that's the holistic view. That's everything that they need, right from housing, budgeting, and then right through to employment and employability skills and needs. So CVs, CV writing, your cover letters, and interviews, and everything that comes with trying to find a job search as well. Once they have ideally transitioned into education or training, we then have an alumni or a graduate program. So it's about retention of employment or training. So we stay involved, and if there's any issues or problems going on, then young people can get in touch with us, or if an employer says, hey, I think there's something happening, then we can keep engaged with them and work out what it is and hopefully work through that, and then they can retain that job or training that they're doing. On average, we have 600 volunteers that come in and participate per year, which is around 1,500 volunteer hours. This year with COVID, we've had half that amount of people, but the same amount of volunteer hours, which is really exciting because it shows that just more people, so less people are coming, but they're spending more time here. So they're coming out with higher level outcomes that they're developing through what they're learning here on the farms. When you come just for an hour, you tend to get jobs that are the lower skilled kind of jobs like weeding. When you've come enough, 3 or 4 times, you end up getting the jobs that are the higher level skills requirement. So learning about transplanting, learning about soil health and how we care for our soil, learning about harvesting and processing and all those kind of things too. So we do sell our vegetables, we sell them to the community, and so people can go online and subscribe to a weekly veggie box, or they can buy online and just select what veggies you want. And so those proceeds go to creating the financial sustainability of the farm, being that vehicle for the youth and community engagement. So anyone can come onto the farm and So we have organisations, businesses, tertiary facilities and schools, including some preschools. My son's preschool comes and they go on worm hunts, which is quite cool, and they learn all about the worm farms. But this is really important to us because it's supporting young people to feel integrated into the community. So they have leadership opportunities. They might be leading a group with a particular farm task that they're set up for. We have schools that can come on a weekly basis. Linwood College have a group that come every week, and our interns can often co-lead that hour session. And then, yeah, and so, I mean, what we see is the grunty stuff that's really relating to this conversation, and the outcomes that we see that are relating to the positive health benefits of getting your hands in the soil, working with the whenua and seeing the difference you can make through physical activities, and in particular as a team. So mental health also being positively impacted, which is being documented in research by people like Julia Rutledge at the University of Canterbury. She's just launched a new book, which is called Better Brains, which is really exciting because it really reflects everything that we say we do, but it actually gives the research and the bits and pieces around us saying, you know, when it comes to a funding application, for example, it can be backed up by this research too. So we just see young people being healthy and well, and going on a journey from not knowing what they want to do, having some quite complex mental health and drug and alcohol addictions, through to realizing their purpose, having a sense of security, having a safe place to be, and finding that they've got a community and people to connect and learn from, and then outcomes of getting education and employment or further training, which relates to what it is that they care about. So it's about not necessarily getting everybody into horticulture, but that definitely is encouraged because we love it, obviously. But it's really about supporting that young person to be the best version of themselves. So if they want to be whatever it is that they want to be, we support that and help them identify what that roadmap is. Yeah, so I think my 10 minutes is up, but there's always more to chat about.
Always. Thank you. It's some really, really great work, and of course I live in Richmond, so it's even better that you're part of a project in our neck of the woods as well. Well, great. So thank you to our three panelists, and it's now a chance for all of us to ask some questions, so people who are listening or panelists of each other. But I'm going to start off the ball rolling, and just I'm really interested in connections, because that's one of the things that, from a Learning City point of view, is critically important. And so, you know, Hamish, you talked about the FRN and about the connecting the pieces. How well do you think, this is for all three of you, you're talking to each other now, and what are the possibilities for you to be more linked up with across the network, so that it really can benefit learners of all ages? So I'm just going to throw that open for anyone to comment on.
Look, I think it's a difficult one, actually, because there are lots of community groups around who have been working in this space and doing their own thing for quite a while. And to get them to work together, they're having to let go of some of the control that they've had and work with other people and coordinate with other people. And there's a fair bit of what happens with volunteer organisations where, I'm sorry, I'm going to try and put this really diplomatically, where people have their own little fiefdom, and they think that they control everything about it, and they don't want any input from anybody else, or they don't want to lose any control. And I think that's a real challenge in this space. There's some there's some people around who are some egos who are hard to work around. However, I have got quite a lot of hope in this space, because I see there are more of these groups working together. There are, you know, the Horticultural Society, the Canterbury Community Gardens Association, Cultivate. You know, there are lots of these groups who are all doing the same mahi. They have the same vision, and the more that they can work together, the more powerful that can be for the community, I think. So
I'm going to, just as a community organisation who hold collaboration as a central key aspect to being able to achieve our overall goals and aspirations, we have always and will always believe that we cannot do it alone, and that it has to be, I always think of a puzzle. We're just one piece of the puzzle, and it has to be done together. What we struggle with is the resources and the time to connect with people, to make those collaborative opportunities really come alive. And what it is for us is, it's like, what is real collaboration? What does that really look like? To me, that looks like when you're doing things on a weekly basis together. We've been doing things with Richmond Community Group Gardens, and I see them doing collaboration in action, is what I call it. And that's really exciting to me. And we're trying to do that. And I think it's really finding the opportunities where people can actually connect in together and collaborate in action.
Cool. Kate?
I think the Vogel Street property that Hayley and Co have got now will hopefully provide a base for some of this coordination work to happen. You only have to look at other community purposes and groups, such as the ones that have come together at the Loft in Linwood, to see what can happen when a group of organisations come together. And you know, if they can start with collaborating on activity, but get to the stage where they're collaborating on all of those backroom functions, then you know, I think you've really cracked it, because every organisation has to have a certain level of admin, and they have to have all these administrative resources that it just seems ridiculous to me that it's repeated over and over and over again in the not-for-profit sector. So if we could get people physically together, you know, to be sharing those sorts of functions, I think that would help enormously. For the last 6 months, I have been thinking very much that we are at a stage with food resilience and the number of players that there are in this sector now, that probably a pretty large scale hui would be really useful. You know, I'd like to see a 2 or 3 day proper meeting. It's a matter of thinking about how that might be funded and who might organise it. But I think I actually think there's a lot to discuss between all these organisations, and I will say boldly that I think the council desperately needs to come to that table, because I think a lot of organisations that have aspirations to expand their operations, and I'll say particularly in the red zone, are getting to the stage where they really need some certainty. So as soon as the council's got ownership of that land, I think the sooner some decisions can be made about who gets what land to use and for what, will be great.
And also, can I add to that? Sorry, just as a person, for you, Kate, a potential idea might be that, so as an organisation, I don't see what other organisations that are doing the same but different, and potential collaborative opportunities. So maybe having that as something where the council are able to say or suggest, hey, these guys are doing this, that might be a good collaborative opportunity. And we'd be open to that, for example. I'm not sure if everyone else would be, but I totally would be.
And I think part of the problem we don't want this to become an encounter session about the council, obviously.
Yeah.
Hard for it not to, but anyway. But I think the main thing that a lot of groups need, and I've been saying this for all the time I've been here, is a navigator. That the most difficult thing that people have with the territorial authority is navigation of who to speak to at what time and about what.
Yeah.
So if the network could get to a stage where they have key navigators within the parks section of council, so that they know who they should be going to and what conversations, it's going to save months and months of work.
So if I was wanting to connect some aspects of learning in the space, and sometimes people will come to us and ask us to run a connect lab, which is just who's in the room and what are they doing and what are their strengths, so I can go to a person with expertise. Is there a list or some sort of a place where all of the groups are listed and that we could refer to?
I don't think it's been made public yet, but there has been a bit of work done around the map of the network and who's involved with it and which organisations and who are the key stakeholders and who are the key individuals. Hayley Guglietta, who's not on the call operates in she's the chair of the Food Resilience Network. She also has been really instrumental in the Richmond Community Garden. She's in Community Gardens Association. She's everywhere, so I'm sure you all know Hayley. She's been coordinating that piece of work, and I think there's some really good capturing that all of the mahi that's going on around town and who's involved. I think that needs to be something that's a shared resource for everybody to connect to. So.
Great, yeah, I'd agree. And just before I see who else might have a question, I have a question that follows on from that in the connected ecosystem space, and it comes from your comment, Fee, about the number of volunteer hours, and my wondering is about the place of recognition for either volunteering or the transferable skills that a lot of people are getting in your spaces, and whether there's any thought from any of you about micro-credentials or some sort of acknowledgement of the work that people are doing, so that helps to elevate their opportunities as well.
We are trying to create a workbook or a manual so people can take away their knowledge and look back in 2 years' time and actually go, oh, that's right, that's what I learned at Cultivate, or be able to take it home and carry those learnings on. Again, it has four elements within it, being urban farming education, and obviously we're going to be focusing on our interns, but also it can help anyone because, so employment, well-being, and then environmental sustainability, and how they're all interlinked and interconnected, and the importance of all of them. But yeah, that's definitely something that we identify as something we need to validate and create. It's just going to take a wee minute to create something. Also that has links in with NCA qualifications, so it's really a foundation. If it's so when we're talking about diverse learners, we're talking about learners who are ones that we're talking about who have learning and behavioural difficulties right through to a high functioning learner, but it gives someone a foundation or a platform of the skills and knowledge base that you're required to then get to the next, understand and have the confidence to then go to tertiary education or connect in with other learning institutes.
Amazingly, my next meeting after this is with the person I'm working on a skills checklist with at council, so that we can, for our volunteers and cadets, we can give them a booklet that follows them around. where they can have validation from the people who are supervising them that they have reached a level of competency in that skill, so that can be attached, along with a narrative from their supervisor around the soft skills that they believe they've acquired as well, and what their strengths and work-ons are. So the next step for that is the micro-credentialing. I have to say, we probably don't know where to start with that, and how to start to get that recognition. But I guess that would be possibly a conversation with UC.
Great, thank you. Lots of possibilities there to actually talk to each other if you've all got workbooks and doing things separately. It's lots of opportunity. I'm going to hand over to Louisa, who's got a question.
Hi, am I meant to speak it?
Yeah,
I just type it.
Well, you can just type it, but better to hear your voice. So,
well, just basically, in terms of food sustainability, I grow a lot of my own food, and one of the things that I believe is that we should all be, in some form or another, not necessarily all of our own food, but something to contribute. How do you, I guess this one's particularly for Fiona, is how do you get past people's sort of requirement in our current society to have instant gratification, where everyone wants everything now, and that's not how it works when you grow a vegetable. So I was just interested in your view about moving them past that in order to teach people and get people to adopt the idea.
It's actually interesting you talk about instant gratification, because I often find myself talking about the garden being one of the only places, one of the only places outside technology that you can really get instant gratification, because we have beds that are already, the produce is at the end of its life, so it all needs to be cropped out. And that whole sense of teamwork when everyone's working together and doing the job together, the sense of comradeship and like just having fun and doing something that's quite physical, ripping out some old produce, preparing the bed and getting it really nice and like perfect, like that sense of like, wow, it looks actually really beautiful. And then being able to go along and plant lots of green things and brown stuff, I often say, but it's all linear and it's nice and tidy and clean, and the satisfaction that you get from it being previously untidy, messy, end of its life to a new life, and that can happen within an hour, which to me is pretty instant gratification. So I see young people seeing that they can get that feeling while being in the outdoors and doing physical work with other people. Does that answer your question?
Sorry. Yes, that sounds, that does. Thank you.
Cool.
Perhaps the sector needs to get together and develop an at almost no cost campaign that can go viral amongst all of the food network under the tagline "Good things take time."
It does.
Sorry, I was going to say, they do. That good things take time, and I think, as you're saying, Fiona, that all of that work that you're doing and cultivating the ground and it is so rewarding and satisfying. They always talk about that. Where do you feel most at ease and happiest? And mine is always in my garden. There's nothing more satisfying, I think, and it's a long-term plan, but there's nothing more satisfying than picking your own fruit, than having so much food that you have to give it away or waste it. I think that's incredibly satisfying, and it's incredibly abundant as well. Once people actually realize, once people realize just how much money they can save by growing their own food in their own property or on a balcony or whatever, they'll realize just how important this is for the future. I think this is really important. So.
Great.
Or even doing something like leaving a bucket of your spare silver beet out at your gate with a free sign on it and seeing how quickly it goes.
Yeah, There's a lot more of that happening. We've got 5 minutes to go, so we're just going to squeeze in another question from Cecilia, and I don't think Cecilia's mic was working, so I'm going to just read her question. Is what would you recommend would help to turn people into curious individuals, engaged in sustainable foods, willing to make changes in their life, not necessarily to grow, but to buy local produce instead of supermarket produce?
Great question. I want to know that answer too. I think sometimes it's just getting out there and doing it and having a go. I see, and I remember a statement from one young person that was just like, I don't even know why I like this. I hate getting my hands dirty and I don't like worms. But she was with us for over a year.
It's any type of change is just all about small nudges, 1,000,001 small strategies to get people to move, whether it's engaging your older people in the neighbourhood to come down to the local garden and teach 3 or 4 families how to lay in a winter garden, through to full-on campaigns about buying local. It's just everybody trying with these little nudges all the time. I don't think there's any one big answer to that. I mean, some people are so entrenched in, as Louisa said, wanting everything instantly at their fingertips and being able to buy strawberries in July, that they just, the whole idea of doing things sustainably hasn't reached them yet. But I guess for a lot of people and for the families who most need it, you've got to get people past the point of survival before they're able to listen to those messages.
Totally agree, Kate. And I think so many people are at that point of, barely keeping food on the table for their families. And that's why I think this is so empowering and transformational if you can start growing your own food. I think that's the first starting point. But we give away a lot of seeds because, most plants, if you let them go to seed, will grow thousands of seed on one plant. So it's a great way to be able to start people off and start them growing just something that's a staple for them, their lettuces or their, some spinach to grow over the winter or something like that. I think that's a really good step. But I think to come back to something else you said there, Kate, is that taking a step, taking any tiny little incremental step just helps unfreeze people, helps them start moving towards it. Once you start taking one step, you can discover just how many steps you can make. Those incremental changes aren't so overwhelming, aren't such massive changes to your lifestyle that they're scary, that they become really easy to do. I think if we get people to do much more of that, thinking about the incremental change, I don't know whether you've heard of the 1% rule, which is all about that, improving organizations by improving everything by 1%. You pretty rapidly discover that you can improve some aspects by 10 or 15% or 20% there or whatever. You can rapidly improve and rapidly you see a snowballing effect of momentum that it builds. And I think that's really empowering, and that's something that once people actually start taking any action, they'll see that happening for themselves, and they'll see that they'll feel much better about themselves by taking action. So
best retail promotion of the century. New World Little Garden, maybe not perfect.
Fabulous.
The little plastic tags in the top of the things, not so good. But literally the best thing I've seen come out of retail ever.
Nice to know. I'm sure they'll be pleased to hear that.
And it can just be a simple step like throwing something in the ground and watching it grow. And if you've got kids, it's really exciting too. And I know for me that we don't grow. I mean, we do actually. We've got a food forest, a very early stages food forest that I've been planting and working on developing the soil and things. But with my son, we just have a few peas and a few leafy greens and a few strawberries and anything, and the fruit that we pick and anything that we pick, he will eat. And so the rewarding factor of me as a mum, knowing that he's actually, it can be hard to get veggies into kids, but if you are picking it from your own garden, they tend to eat it they're more likely to eat it. And it's then learning that the taste of veggies actually have a distinct taste. A carrot has a really beautiful taste if you're eating it straight from the garden, or, it hasn't been on a shelf for a long time and it's not full of pesticides and herbicides. It's actually, you don't need to add a lot of flavours to your meals because it's all in the veggies themselves. And when people get that flavour, I see light bulb moments and like, wow, yeah.
Thank you. So I guess the key message to finish is to take action, to just do something, no matter how small, and keep moving forward. And I think that's a key message for us all to link the food sustainability and learning. So thank you to our panelists. It's been amazing having the three of you talking together about this important piece of work and how it fits with authentic learning and how it can make a difference to a diverse range of learners. This is an event brought to you by Ako Otatahi Learning City Christchurch, and this week is our Learning Days. Check us out online and visit some of the other events. We will be uploading this onto our YouTube channel, and all people who are registered for the event will get a copy of the recording, or the link to the copy of the recording. So Fee, Kate, Hamish, thanks so much for sharing the last hour with us, and hopefully you'll carry on your good works, and we'll be able to do some more connecting across the community to keep making a difference. So on that note, mā te wā, see you again soon.
Thank you very much for hosting it, Jill. Awesome. Great to meet you all. See you.
Cheers.